This is Visitors Book, and I'm Maija, your host. In this program, we're going to be meeting with diplomats and foreigners who are here in Pakistan, and we're going to find out what they really think about the country. Let's go. So our guest today is the Canadian High Commissioner, Wendy Gilmour, and we've just reached her office, so let's go find her. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, so nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. What a wonderful house you have here. So how long have you been in Islamabad now?
I arrived at the beginning of November in last year, so that's about 8 months now.
All right. And how do you like it so far?
I like it a lot. There's a very hospitable country, very interesting people.
Yeah, that's very true. And where were you posted before?
Immediately before coming to Pakistan, I was in Canada at our headquarters in Ottawa. I was back for a number of years because I served in a couple of other government departments on a time out of the Foreign Service.
All right.
But before that, I have been posted twice in Africa, twice in Eastern Europe, in the United Kingdom, and in the United States twice.
Okay, wow, so a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. So this is the first time in South Asia then?
It is. I did spend some time off and on in Afghanistan, in both Kabul and Kandahar.
Oh, great. So must be a very different experience compared to that.
Yes, very much so.
In what respects would you say?
Well, it was a very different assignment at the time. When I was in Kabul, I was primarily working with the International Security Assistance Force, or in support of them.
Yeah.
And when I was in Kandahar, I was involved in the establishment of Canada's Provincial Reconstruction Team, which was a combined military-civilian organization that we had in Kandahar City.
Wow, yeah. Okay. And where in Canada are you from, actually?
So I was born in Southern Ontario in a place called Hamilton, which is right at the western side of Lake Ontario. But I moved to Ottawa, which is the Canadian national capital, when I was quite young. Okay. And grew up primarily in Ottawa and west of Ottawa. All
right. Do you see any similarities between Islamabad and Ottawa, like both administrative capitals? Anything?
So Islamabad is a planned city. It was established for the capital. Ottawa was more of an organic city. It was initially, we say in Canada, a lumber town. It was built as a result of the timber trade in the 19th century.
Oh, wow.
And became Canada's national capital, first in 1865, before our Confederation, and then was solidified, oh my God, maybe not 1865. I think I'm going to get that wrong. All the Canadian historians will be very mad at me. Maybe the 1850s. But it was chosen by Queen Victoria as the capital of Canada, because at the time we were continued to be worried about invasion from the United States. So Ottawa was chosen because it was a good few hundred kilometers away from the Canada-US border.
Oh, I see.
The capital had previously been in a place called Kingston, which is right on the Canada-US border.
Okay, well, not a lot of people know that. Great. And I mean, Islamabad is often seen as being a little bit boring because, like, most people are not from here, and it's not that big, and not a lot of cultural stuff maybe going on compared to other cities. How do you find it? Do you think it's a nice place to live?
I think it's a great place to live. I'm not really a big city person.
Oh, yeah?
Ottawa has just passed 1 million people. So most of the time that I was growing up, it was under 500,000.
Okay.
And just in the last sort of 20 or so years has it grown quite considerably. So I like the feel of Islamabad because it's a smaller city, it's easy to get around, and most importantly for me, because there are opportunities to get outdoors and go hiking.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So what does Canada actually focus on in Pakistan? Like, what are the main areas?
We are a full-service embassy, High Commission here. High Commission because Pakistan is also, like Canada, a Commonwealth country.
Exactly, yeah.
Here's my tidbit for your viewers who may not know. The reason it's called a High Commission and not an embassy is because at one point the theory was that the Queen was the head of state for all Commonwealth countries, and the Queen cannot send an ambassador to herself. Hence, a High Commissioner is a representative of a head of government to a head of government.
I see.
Now, the majority of nations that are in the Commonwealth no longer have the Queen as head of state, but we continue to say High Commission and High Commissioner as part of the tradition.
Oh, that's very interesting.
So that's my fact for the day.
Great.
So we are a full service mission. First and foremost, like any Canadian embassy or High Commission abroad, our responsibility is to serve the needs of the Canadian community in Pakistan. So we have tremendous people-to-people contacts between Canada and Pakistan. Estimate that in Pakistan at any time there could be between 40 to 60 or even more thousand Canadian citizens, people entitled to Canadian citizenship or permanent residency. And so there's a very busy program in ensuring that we're in best positions to make sure that their needs are taken care of, whether it's passports or citizenship documents and assistance for Canadians in distress. We are anticipating that if indeed there is a sizable increase in tourism incoming into Pakistan, as I know that the government is interested in, that could continue to grow, that we could see more and more Canadians. There is at the moment 4 direct flights between Canada and Pakistan. PIA flies from Lahore, Karachi and Islamabad directly to Toronto. So there's a lot of people-to-people movement going back and forth. In addition to that, of course, we have a very active trade program. We are supporting Canadian businesses and Canadian investors who would like to do business with Pakistan, and supporting inward investment into Canada by Pakistani businesses. And we have what we call in most diplomatic missions called their political program, which is the government engagement where we are promoting Canadian interests and Canadian values to our host government. And then we have a very active development program. What used to be called CIDA, the Canadian International Development Assistance Agency, is now incorporated into our foreign ministry. We've amalgamated our foreign ministry so that it's trade, diplomacy, and development. And we have 60 years of development assistance with Pakistan. Our current program is based on what is the policy of the Government of Canada, a feminist international assistance policy. So we are focusing on the needs and the development of women and girls as one of the key tenets of the Sustainable Development Goals.
That's amazing. And I noticed that you also have a program about increasing the democratic participation of women. What exactly do you do to help that?
So that's part of our development assistance program. We have a number of flagship projects that are just being launched now. We're in a transitional renewal of our development program. So we have 2 large projects which have just been announced in the last few months. One is called Women's Voice and Leadership, which is designed to support women advocacy and non-governmental organizations to advocate for women's rights and women's participation in all facets of life, be it business, government, civil society writ large here in Pakistan. And then we have another program which is designed to support women's political participation. And that's working at the local, municipal, provincial, and federal level with organizations that encourage women to participate in electoral politics, to register to vote, to support political parties, to get engaged in the political process. We see in Pakistan, like many countries around the world, in fact even Canada, that the participation of women in the political process doesn't reflect the size of the population of women that exist in the country. And we really believe, as does the United Nations, and then clearly as does the government of Pakistan in committing to the Sustainable Development Goals, that for a country to achieve its full potential, there must be full and equal participation of women in the political process. Yeah,
that's very important. What do you think are the main challenges for women in Pakistan right now in terms of political participation?
I mean, again, there are many challenges, and many are similar to a number of countries around the world.
So you're also a woman working in a very male-dominated field. What advice would you have for women, particularly in Pakistan, who want to get into diplomacy?
I mean, there are some very good and very strong women already in Pakistan's foreign service. Your past foreign secretary, Tamina Janjua, was someone that I look up to and think that she did a wonderful job as the first woman leader of Pakistan's foreign ministry. Pakistan's ambassador, permanent representative to the UN New York, again, is a leader in the multilateral institutions in which she's representing Pakistan. I believe all women should be able to get access to education and opportunities to fulfill what their dreams are. I mean, if a woman, I'm not actually familiar with the process to join the Foreign Service in Pakistan, but if I were being asked this question in Canada, I mean, I would say to a young woman, first of all, get as much exposure as possible to global issues. Travel, and if you have the means to do so, and obviously people that do have those means are very privileged. So if you can, get out of your home country, get around, understand other societies and values and cultures, get as much education as you possibly can, learn as many languages as you can, and then there are many different ways to serve in international fora, whether it's with a foreign ministry or with a multilateral organization, with non-governmental organizations, international business, lots of different ways to get out and be part of an international career. It's even yourself, get into journalism.
Exactly.
It's a great opportunity. I started off my professional experience and career actually in the Canadian Forces, which at the time and still is a very male-dominated environment. And there's one of the first women mayors in Canada was a woman by the name of Charlotte Whitten, and she was the mayor of Ottawa. And she had a saying, for a woman to be treated equally and to get ahead, they had to be twice as good as a man. But fortunately, that's not difficult. So that's been my goal along the way, is just work as hard as I possibly can and make sure, to the extent you can, find advocates, find other women in the organization, make sure that your voice is heard. Yeah,
that's some great advice right there. So what inspired you yourself to get into this field?
Oh, that's a good question. So in Canada, to join the Foreign Service, there's at the time that I joined, which was in the late 80s, there was a national exam. So I think very similar to Pakistan, there's a federal civil service exam. And I was in the last year of my undergraduate program at the time, and all of my friends were going to write the Foreign Service exam. And at the time, I was very much focused on having a career in the Canadian Forces. But I thought I would write the Foreign Service exam just sort of because it was something to do on a Saturday morning. And just the way the process came through, the Canadian Forces were contracting in the late 1980s by virtue of budget cuts more than anything. And the offer for the Foreign Service came through before my transition into the regular force. And so I decided I would try it for a while. And almost 30 years later, I am still here.
Amazing. Wow.
It's happenstance. It's, and I say to young people, I was lucky enough to visit Baria University last week and speak to one of the summer courses.
Oh, really?
And international students, Pakistani students, also students from China. There was one from the Netherlands. And speaking to them really about just sort of seizing the opportunities as they arise. Don't necessarily have to focus to plan, but fall, be in a position where you have prepared yourself to take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, that's great, because you never know what's going to happen in life.
You never know. I wouldn't have said 30 years ago that today I would be here, lucky enough to serve Canada as High Commissioner.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned the importance of education. Is there anything Canada does with regard to that in Pakistan?
We have had a long-standing series of projects designed to support education in Pakistan. Currently, we have one which is coming to its conclusion, hopefully fairly soon, which is a debt swap program with the Federal Ministry of Education and then translated down to the provinces, because education, like in Canada, is now a provincial responsibility. And it was designed to take state debt that Pakistan owed Canada from infrastructure projects 40 years ago, and instead of requiring Pakistan to pay those monies back, reinvest those monies in the education departments in a couple of different provinces. So the one that I've been briefed on very recently, sort of one of the last elements, will be in Sindh province, and it will involve training for teachers to be able to support students in maternal and child health, sexual and reproductive health, which is a great initiative and very needed by especially girl students who may not get access to that type of education elsewhere. And we also have a program that we are doing with the UN Development Program, UNDP, which is designed to support girls in the transition from primary to secondary school. Because here in Pakistan, as many people know, that there's a significant drop-off, almost like the edge of a cliff, on the number of girls that are in primary school versus secondary. And that's for a whole bunch of different reasons. It could be security, safety, access to transport to get to school. It could be families requiring these girls to stay at home to support the wider family, parents and others. It could be because of early marriage in some instances. And it really is important for Pakistan and for Pakistan's development that these girls stay in school and have access to secondary education.
Yeah, excellent. All right, time to take a short break. See you in a bit. Welcome back. I'm here talking to the Canadian High Commissioner. So Canada has a very large Pakistani community. How many Canadians of Pakistani origin do you have?
We don't know exactly because the way our census process works is that people have the ability to self-identify as they wish.
Of course, yeah.
So we estimate anywhere from 300,000 to 500,000 Canadians of Pakistani origin or that came from the region which is now Pakistan. What's interesting in the last census that was done is that the fourth most spoken language in Canada at the moment is Punjabi, after English, French, and Mandarin. So it speaks to the size of the community that's come from this region of the world. We have sizable populations. Probably the largest is in what we call the Greater Toronto Area, the GTA. So when I was back in Canada in June, I was lucky enough to meet with Canadian Pakistanis in Mississauga and Brantford and Thornhill, all of which are suburbs of Toronto itself. And then another very large community in Vancouver, which is on our west coast. In Surrey, British Columbia is one of the sizable concentrations. And then also in pretty much every major centre in Canada, you will find Canadians of Pakistani heritage.
Amazing. So when was it that the first Pakistanis or South Asians started migrating to Canada?
Interestingly enough, at the turn, when I say the turn of the century, the turn of the last century, Canadians that were from South Asia of Sikh origin came as part of the communities to build Canada, to build the Trans-Pacific Railway, which was the railway that linked Canada from coast to coast, and settled then primarily in British Columbia, right on our west coast. We had another large wave of immigration around partition in the decade following, and then a significant number of Pakistanis in the 60s and 70s. The group that I met in Vancouver when I was back in Canada is the oldest organization, the Canada-Pakistan Friendship Association, and some of its founding members came in the 1960s. And then we still continue to have very large communities of Pakistanis moving to Canada even now.
Yeah. So what do most of the people do in Canada? Like I think most of them, people of Pakistani origin, like they come to study there.
It's a huge range. People have emigrated for economic reasons, because of business opportunities. A lot of people have come to study and then stay on after their studies. One of the most successful sort of ways to integrate into Canadian society is to get Canadian credentials, so study professional services or others in Canada, and then stay on to consolidate those credentials. We also have a lot of family class immigrants, so Canadians can sponsor their parents and other adult children and others. We have asylum populations from various places. We have a large asylum population of Afghan Canadians that actually, many of whom were born in or come from Pakistan. So it is a very diverse population, very successful in many ways. Large community of professional, of engineers and doctors and lawyers and nurses, just a wonderful contribution to the Canadian mosaic.
Yeah, and some of them have become very well known as well in Canada. There's some politicians and actors and authors.
We have at the moment, there is currently one Canadian senator of Pakistani, in fact she was born in Pakistan from KPK, Senator Salma.
Oh, wow.
We have, I think, 3 Canadians in our, what we call our House of Commons, our legislature, who are of Pakistani origin, including the first member of parliament to wear a hijab in parliament, which is, I think, a very positive for Canada to see that segment of Muslim women represented in our political level. So really making tremendous contributions. And I mean, that's just in our federal parliament. We have Canadians of Pakistani descent at the provincial level, at the municipal level, integrated throughout Canadian society.
Yeah, and people must be watching Pakistani films, listening to Pakistani music, and I mean in the community there as well. You mentioned that there was a Pakistani film that...
So there is an annual film festival in Canada of South Asian films, and Pakistani film, which I believe is still in theaters here in Pakistan, Baji, just won one of the jury selection prizes.
Okay, great.
So we're very proud that Pakistan is represented that way.
Yeah, that's excellent. So this brings me to my other question, which is that Canada is obviously a very diverse society. It's seen as kind of like a model country for integration. What has made Canada so successful in this respect?
It's a good question, and one which we would need to preserve ourselves, the ideas of tolerance, inclusiveness, really celebrating our differences, the diversity which is Canada. We'd like to see the rest of the world do it as well. It's not to say that it's perfect in Canada at all. We always have work to do. I mean, historically, our treatment of our Indigenous people, our Native peoples, has not been very good.
Yeah.
But starting from the early 1970s, there has been a formal policy in Canada of multiculturalism. The US has talked about the great melting pot. You know, everybody was supposed to become an American. Well, everybody becomes a Canadian, but in becoming a Canadian, we really celebrate our differences. So it is, you know, I can remember even as a kid, many of my friends every Saturday morning would go to Ukrainian language school or to Urdu school or to you know, Hindi, and would actually learn the languages of their parents, to learn their cultures, and to be able to celebrate those cultures.
That's amazing.
And it is something which we really believe is important. We don't ask people to leave their language and culture and ancestral identities behind when they come to Canada. We embrace that, and it really does become part of the Canadian mosaic.
Great. So, but like in the US and Europe, we've had this anti-immigration sentiment on the rise. Has that affected Canada at all?
We're not immune. There are people in Canada that have that have complained or protested against the immigration policies that we've had. Fortunately, not in great numbers. And I think there is certainly there's a global phenomena. We're seeing it in North America, we're seeing it in Western Europe, that the nature of the economy is shifting, and people that have not been able to find work or to see the same economic opportunities because of the changing economy look to blame it on people. And immigrants, especially successful immigrants, have been one of the easy sources of blame. Globalization as a whole has been a source of blame. Irregular migration, people who take advantage of the system by fraudulent claims, by fraudulent documentation, feed the narrative which is anti-immigrant. Fortunately, in Canada, all of the polls that are done, vast majority of people still support and understand the value that immigration brings to our society. But it's something that constantly has to be watched. You have to work at it. Diversity is something that needs to be embraced and worked on. It's not something which in some instances happens naturally. Yeah,
that's very important. And so I read that recently you changed your visa regulations for Pakistanis, especially students. Is it easier for Pakistanis to get a student visa in Canada right now?
So what we did, there's no change to the requirements. What we did is we introduced Pakistan into a number of countries that were already part of what we call our student direct stream. So it's a wonderful development. I'm very pleased that our Minister of Immigration included Pakistan in this list of countries. And what it does is it gives the ability of a Pakistani applicant that's applying for one of the I forget what the term is, the accredited schools. So there, if you go on our website, on our immigration website, there's a whole number of different programs that are identified as being accessible for this program. So it has to be an accredited program. There's then an expedited means of demonstrating financial ability to pay for school. And that's really the core of this program. It allows the applicant to establish what's called in Canada General Investment Certificate, GIC, which puts money into a Canadian bank and holds it there until the student draws down from within Canada. Okay. So it makes it easier for an immigration officer to validate the bona fides of the financial information that's being provided.
I see.
And then there's a verification of the student acceptance, and then of course the bona fides of the student themselves. So the idea is when this program is fully implemented, that it will provide an expedited process, so a shorter time frame for a student, once all of their documentation is available, to be able to then apply for a visa.
Excellent. So have you seen an increase in Pakistanis applying for this visa?
I mean, it's fairly new. This is just the last couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
Most of the Canadian schools, the school term starts in September. So many, and if not the vast majority of people who would be going to study in Canada starting in September will already have gone through the process and got their visa.
Yeah.
So this is a project or a program that will be rolled out over the course of the next few months, and I think we'll really see the benefit for the next academic year.
Okay, excellent. So earlier you mentioned trade as one of the areas that Canada is focusing on, and the current government in Pakistan is trying to get more foreign investment in the country. Are there any Canadian companies here in Pakistan, or is there more interest towards investing in the country now?
I think there is definitely interest in Pakistan as a market, both for the export of Canadian goods and for investment. Certainly one of my goals here in the High Commission is to increase the amount of commerce between Canada and Pakistan. We have at the moment a mutual trading relationship of just over $1 billion a year. So that's great, but it's still a potential for a lot of growth. We've seen a couple of Canadian companies do extremely well here. I'm holding on. I'll do my product placement for Second Cup Coffee, which is a Canadian company which has opened, I believe now, 22 different outlets for coffee throughout Pakistan. I know Pakistan is a tea country. I'm a coffee person, so I was thrilled to understand that Second Cup was here. We have Canadian companies that are invested in renewable energy, and climate change is a particular focus for the Canadian government. So thrilled to see the opportunities that they're pursuing, primarily wind and solar. There's a Canadian company that's operating a wind farm in north of Karachi. And we have Canadians that are investing in ICT, information communications technology, as one of the real areas of growth. Pakistan has a young and dynamic population that's very digitally aware. I think there's more people in Pakistan that have cell phones. Well, I'm sure there's more people in Pakistan that have cell phones than in Canada. But digital penetration is great. And so some very successful Canadian subsidiaries, one of which is Contour Software down in Karachi, which also has subsidiaries in Islamabad and Lahore, and is doing back office software development to support Constellation, which is a big Canadian software company. So there's definitely potential. We are looking for opportunities, and we are looking to support Canadian companies entering into the market. It's not always an easy market. There remains, I think, quite a bit of work to be done in Pakistan to make the regulatory environment more easy to navigate for international investors and to make the process somewhat more transparent. But I am very encouraged by what the Board of Investment at the federal level is doing, by boards of investment like in Punjab I visited, that are really trying to make it as I say, a cleaner and transparent environment for international companies to be able to come and do work here.
Great.
So I have been having my coffee along the way. I'm rarely without a coffee, but I would like to invite you to join me for a coffee or tea and maybe a Canadian biscuit.
Okay, sounds great. Time to take a short break. See you in a bit. Welcome back. We're here with the Canadian High Commissioner, and we're about to have some tea and biscuits.
Exactly. Could I offer you some?
Yeah, thank you.
We have Canadian chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, wow.
And date squares, and not for you.
Oh, and who's this?
This is my dog, Shammy. She's originally American.
Okay.
She comes from Colorado Springs, which was one of my last postings. And she's 11 years old, so she's on the older side.
Wow. So she's traveled with you everywhere.
There we go.
Very well trained.
Yes, well, yeah, until she gets wind of there's actually cookies on the table.
Sweet tooth.
Exactly.
So she's completely fine here in Pakistan. She doesn't have any issues with the heat and the weather.
Well, she spends a lot more time indoors than has previously been the case. She's going to go find a place to lie down now, I think. She's a bit older now, so it's okay. She doesn't have to walk as much as we would have when she was younger, but it is very hot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very hot for me too, as a Canadian.
Yeah, but so are these like Canadian specialties actually?
Well, I like to think so. A chocolate chip cookie is a very, very Canadian cookie. I'm sure you'd find them in the States as well. The date squares are very Canadian, and one of the great finds, I was thrilled when I came to Pakistan, incredible generosity, especially during Ramadan. People kept sending me dates.
Oh, wow.
So I was lucky enough, my wonderful staff here took a recipe that was my grandmother's and made oatmeal date squares.
Oh, that's amazing.
And because it's dates and oatmeal, then we can say that they're healthy.
Absolutely. So how do you like Pakistani food?
I love it. Yeah? I have enjoyed South Asian food writ large since I was quite young. Okay. I had a roommate in university that whose parents came from the region.
Okay.
And her mother used to come and try and teach us how to cook, sometimes more successfully than others. But I really do enjoy it. So it's one of the great pleasures being in Pakistan and being able to travel around the different parts of the country and try the different regional cuisine.
Yeah. Do you have any particular favorites? Anything that you learned to cook?
When I was learning how to cook, she's now going to go and lie down somewhere. I was learning how to make chapatis, and I managed to set my kitchen on fire.
Oh my God.
Which I discovered you're not supposed to put oil in the pan.
Yeah.
So that was a good lesson learned. But my favorite dish is palak paneer.
Yeah, it is amazing. Do you still cook like Pakistani food here yourself?
I am very lucky and very privileged in that I have a wonderful staff that's been working with the Canadian High Commission for a great number of years, and so I'm extremely well taken care of.
Yeah, and I'm sure, there are so many amazing restaurants in Islamabad as well that you can.
But I don't end up going out as much.
Oh, you don't?
Because I do have this wonderful staff here, yeah. So I try and have as many events as I can here at the house, and we also have, there's lovely hotels that a lot of the diplomatic events are held at.
Exactly.
So my real goal, and I think it's very important for the international community, for the diplomats here, is to do as much as we can to get outside of Islamabad and to visit the rest of Pakistan.
So how much have you gotten to travel yourself?
Yeah, not as, I've tried to get out a little bit. So I have been to Karachi and Lahore a number of times. I've been up north on one visit so far. I'm looking forward to getting back. I went to Gilgit and Hunza on that trip. And I've been to Faisalabad and to visit some people there. And I have quite a bit of plans for the fall. We've had a rapid turnover of staff this summer, so I've been pretty close to home over the course of the summer.
Okay, great. Do you have some places where you'd still like to go, like anything that you're really interested in?
Over the course of the next few years while I'm in Pakistan, my intent is to get to all of the provinces, all of the major cities, as far out of the cities as I can. Yeah. So for that, to some degree, I'm dependent on the government here. They still require non-objection certificates for diplomats to travel. But I do know that the government is interested in promoting Pakistan as a place to do business and a place of tourism, and part of that is making sure that diplomats are able to get out and about. Yeah,
that's great. And these places that you've visited so far, which one was your favorite?
Oh, I can't say that or I'd get in trouble. The diversity in Pakistan is incredible. Yeah. It's a country like Canada that has coastline and mountains and plains and desert. There is snow in the winter.
Exactly.
I think what I really enjoy is the variety. Different peoples, different languages. So there's a lot in common between Canada and Pakistan.
Yeah. And have you noticed any other similarities, like other than the diversity, maybe like some little cultural things?
Well, I mean, we have, I think Shami is coming back to join us.
After having a little drink of water?
Exactly. On culture. So we have a very active South Asian cultural community in Canada with film and dance, and I am, to the extent that I can, trying to get to see as much of that as possible. So I'm encouraged to get out and about. It's a tremendous privilege to be a representative of your country to another country, and part of our job is to get to know that other country. And to do that, I need to travel and I need to visit and meet people.
Yeah. But what about like Canadian food? It's quite different from Pakistani food, right?
Do you know, people ask me a lot, what is Canada's national dish?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we have one necessarily. Different parts of the country, different regions have their own cuisine.
Yeah.
And in French-speaking Canada, there's a traditional French cuisine, which is a rustic cuisine, a dish called poutine, which is French fries with gravy and cheese curds, which is wonderful. But it really needs to be eaten at about -40 after a day of skiing. Okay. I would say South Asian cuisine is Canadian cuisine. Yeah. Some of the best Pakistani and Indian and Bangladeshi and Sri Lankan food I've ever had has been in Canada.
Really?
So some of the best sushi I've ever had has been in Canada. So I think, you know, the wonderful part of Canada's multicultural mosaic is that we can absorb and take each one of these dishes as our own.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And have you had any problems with, like, a lot of people ask foreigners here, like, oh, was the food too spicy? Like, I mean, I personally really like spicy food. How is it for you?
So far, it's been great.
Yeah.
I know I'm not sure if there's tricks of the trade, but if I am unsure of the spice of the dish, I always ask for some raita or some yogurt.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And it helps.
It does.
I like food that I can taste. I don't like food that's so spicy that it burns your mouth.
Yeah.
But I do like spices.
Yeah, me too. So it's been almost a year now for you here. Was there anything that you didn't expect or something like surprising about Pakistan when you first got here?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's not that I expected differently, but I was very pleasantly surprised by the hospitality, by how warm and welcoming people are.
Yeah.
I didn't expect them not to be, but the scope of it is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I didn't expect the winter to be as cool as it was. You know, when you're from Canada and you experience the Canadian winters we have here, when somebody says, oh yes, we have a winter, you know, I didn't think that it was a real winter. So the fact that there was snow in Murray and there was snow in the hills was a great surprise.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. The weather for the majority of the year is lovely.
Yeah.
I do find it very warm right at the moment and very humid.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it getting a bit cooler.
Yeah. So you mentioned you like to go hiking here. Is there anything else that you like to do in your free time here in Islamabad?
Well, I like to explore to the extent that I can. And the extent is more, I'm not great at planning ahead, and so the fact that we have to ask 5 days in advance if we want to leave the city limits requires me to be a little bit more deliberate in my escapes. But I just enjoy getting out and about and meeting people.
Great. Okay, so it's time for our next segment, which is the rapid fire round.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay. Okay, shalwar kameez or pantsuit?
Oh, shalwar kameez.
Yeah?
There are some very bad examples of pantsuits.
Yeah.
I was lucky that I was not an adult in the 70s.
Okay. Lahore or Karachi?
Both.
Very diplomatic. Basketball or ice hockey?
Ooh, now there is a good question. Normally I would say ice hockey, but Canada's one professional basketball team, the Raptors, part of the National Basketball League, just won the entire championship. And more than 1 million people came out to the streets of Toronto to celebrate in June. So right at the moment, and I'm sure any Canadians watching this will not be very happy with me, but I would have to say basketball. Okay. Did you know that basketball was invented by a Canadian?
Yes, I did know that. Great. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, definitely coffee.
Maple syrup or jalebis?
Oh, maple syrup. My family has a maple bush, is what we call it. My parents actually made maple syrup.
Oh, wow.
So as a kid, I grew up making maple syrup.
Excellent. Vancouver or Toronto?
Oh, Vancouver. I'm a mountain person.
Butter tart or biryani?
Well, the two are very different. Butter tart is a dessert, biryani. So can I have the biryani and then follow it with a butter tart?
Okay, just this once. Camels or moose?
Moose. I'm looking at my moose.
Yeah. What is that, by the way?
Oh, it's a friend of mine made it, who is a craftsperson, but it's a canoe with a moose and a paddle. And it's actually designed to hold a wine bottle, but I don't have a wine bottle in it at the moment. But I like my moose with a canoe. I paddle canoes, so I like canoes.
Oh, great. Wow. So we just discussed this. Canadian or Pakistani winters?
Canadian.
Mountains or beach?
Mountain, by far.
Mangoes or peach?
Ooh, depends a little bit on the season. But I have to say, I was never a mango fan before coming to Pakistan, but the mangoes that I've had here are extraordinary.
They are.
So probably for the moment, then I'll say mangoes.
Okay. Islamabad or Ottawa?
Oh. Yeah, I don't think, again, I would choose between the two. My family is in Ottawa, so it has a very special place in my heart. But I am enjoying living in Islamabad right now.
Okay, so both. Best thing about Pakistan?
Ooh, mountains and hiking.
Great.
And people. There's more than one thing that's best.
Yeah. Great answers. Okay, we've finally reached the part of the program where I always ask my guests to sign our visitor's book.
Okay, and I'm going to do the same for you.
Oh.
So we'll exchange.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Ooh, it's a heavy one.
It is. It's been around a long time.
Wow.
There you go. Good luck reading my writing.
Let's see.
Thank you very much. Here's your pen.
Thank you. Okay, let's see what you wrote. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Canada and Pakistan, and welcome to the High Commission. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for the wonderful tea and cookies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it for today. Please join me again next week. Goodbye.